at the start here. But I'll, like I said, I'll keep my eye on the waiting room and pull anyone in as they come.
That's great. So that being said, that was the disclaimer. We are recording this conversation for posterity and also to share with the community and for those who were unable to or are unable to attend today. So great, let me just roll right into this. Welcome to the second Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Community Conversation Series led by the Renton Chamber of Commerce. My name is Sean Greenlee, board member and DEI consultant for the Chamber. I'm here in collaboration with Diane Dobson, your Chamber CEO. I want to thank the City of Renton, Preeti Shadar, and Benita Horn for their partnership and support in building this curriculum. I also want to acknowledge Rock Project Management and Zenobia Harris from the Kent Chamber of Commerce for their engagement and support. In today's complex and continuously evolving environment, social issues and inequities are becoming ever more evident in the workplace. Here at the Chamber and in partnership with the City, we constantly strive to support our member organizations and community. We strive to provide additional resources, community collaboration, and shared mentorship as we look to tackle these complex issues. We must work together and leverage each other's knowledge while acknowledging that many of us are operating under resource constraints. Creating an inclusive environment and improved employee engagement is critical to success, both in the workplace and for improved business results. Leading today's forum will once again be Benita Horn, Inclusion Equity Consultant for the City of Renton. She's a member of the Mayor's Inclusion Task Force and has also moderated many forums about race in the Seattle area. This session is designed to be a listening session where we build upon the initial framing from last month. Benita will recap our previous conversation with Renton leaders, Dr. Kevin McCarthy, Bernie O'Donnell, and Rick Hayes on systemic issues in the workplace and how that shows up for them. She will then facilitate a discussion among 3 other impressive community leaders, which I will let them introduce themselves, to provide further context and help lay the groundwork for the path forward. This is the second in a series of ongoing discussions, bringing in subject matter experts, leveraging resources for education and training, and creating opportunity for safe, candid community conversations. Many of us, admittedly so, are at different places on this journey. Knowing how and where to start is a great first step because we're all in this together. We do want to encourage this session to be an open forum where you, the community, ask questions and share insights. Some input has been solicited and gathered in advance. We will also be monitoring the chat box and have carved out time to address these issues. So please, throughout this discussion, make sure that you're utilizing a chat box to raise any questions and or statements, comments that you wish for us to cover. So Benita and I, and our panelists will try to address these as best as we can. So that being said, Benita, I pass it over to you.
Thank you, Sean. I used to laugh every time I see that picture. That's when somebody catches you with your mouth open, which is my usual mode of operation. So, it's like you're always surprised when you see that picture and it lingers on the web. So one of the things that I do love about that picture is that I've had the opportunity on 6 different occasions to travel to Kenya, East Africa, and to people of African descent from around the world, mostly in the United States, but other countries as well, to build relationships with people with whom they've never met before, but with whom they share an ancestry and a homeland. And so that's one of my favorite, you always have to do a little bit of shopping. So that's one of my favorite outfits from Kenya. So welcome everybody. I'm just honored once again to be the moderator. And as Sean said, this is the second in our series of conversations. And the whole intent is really to expand our individual and collective circles of comfort as we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, to try to align our terminology as we talk about it so that we're all on the same page. When we were together last time, one of the things that we did was we shared some beginning definitions of terms that often come up when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think Ashley's going to put those in the chat box for us, right, Sean? So that people can refer to them again. But you know, just basically, I'm just going to go through, not the whole, it's a one-page handout. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just to talk about diversity. You know, diversity is a range of human differences, which includes all the ways that we are alike and all the ways that we're different. So whether that might be our gender, our age, our race, our physical ability, our sexual orientation, our gender identification and expression, our physical ability, all of that and more. And, you know, the reason that we really want to define it is because so many times organizations set their goal as diversity. And I am speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for the chamber, but diversity is like getting the community at the table, like bringing together a wide range of people based on all of the ways they're alike and all the ways they're different. That's an entree point. You know, if we talk about equity, you know, equity is a measure of fairness. You know, we have a lot of times, you know, in our broader culture and in the U.S. and in laws, we use the term equal a lot. You know, equal employment opportunity, you know, fair housing, you know, and so forth. And, you know, both equality and equity are necessary if we're going to move the needle forward. But equity is a measure of fair treatment, whereas equality is a measure of sameness. So equality would be if you went to the shoe store and you could buy any pair of shoes you wanted, as long as they were men's shoes, size 6 brown. That's equality. We all get the same. Equity is we go to the shoe store and we can get any style, any color, any size that fits us because we get what we need. That's equity, fairness. And then inclusion is really about the intentional, ongoing effort to make sure that that range of diversity we talk about as individuals, that collective about all of us as individuals, that we have a chance to fully participate in all aspects of organizational and community work, of decision making. And so it's really about sharing power. And so all three are important. And so that's why, you know, we talk about all three, and we'll continue to talk about all three. So we have three esteemed panelists today. As Sean said, this is a listening session. And sometimes in a listening session, you have to kind of prime the pump. If we just said, okay, we're listening, talk, we were afraid that no one would. So we brought in, invited three extraordinary people of very different backgrounds and lived experiences to begin to prime the pump for us, to do a little bit of sharing. And we're going to ask them a few questions, and then we're going to open it up to you. So I'm going to ask each of these individuals to more fully introduce themselves. So we have James Alberson, Zenobia Harris, and Benny Royce Royan, and they come from backgrounds that may be different and may be similar in some way. They're going to share that with you. So what I want to do, I'm going to ask each panelist. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I'm going to time you. And what I would like you to do, because we want to share the majority of our time for the larger discussion, but in that time, I'd like you to tell us about yourselves in any way that you want to introduce yourself, the organization you represent, and the role that you play in creating a diverse and inclusive workplace. And, you know, think about, as you respond, why diversity, equity, inclusion are important to you and your organizations. What obstacles do you encounter, and what tactics do you employ, and what resources could you benefit from? That's a lot, I know. So any of those areas that resonate with you that you would like to share with us. So I'm going to just invite you to share in the order in which I see you on the slide. So James Alberson. James, would you please introduce yourself and and you have 5 minutes to share your thinking in response to those questions.
Okay, thank you, Benita, and thank you for pronouncing my name correctly and not the way it's spelled on the slide. Yes, there is no T in my last name. You know, that was a lot, Benita, and the older I get, the shorter my memory gets, so I likely will not cover all of those points. I'll just speak to just the thoughts that kind of come to mind for me, and may not even take 5 minutes. But James Albertson, I am the owner and principal of Sandler Training, which is basically a business training and development organization. I own a franchise of what is a global franchise organization, and interestingly enough, I'm one of 250 franchisees around the world. I'm one of only 2 other Black franchise owners in the in the whole network, which, you know, over 11 years, that hasn't changed much. So I find it interesting, and you know, my angle with the DEI initiative that comes from, you know, I think I'm on maybe 2 or 3, well, 3 different organizations where on committees where we're discussing this. Everybody comes from their own angle, of course, their own experience. I grew up in the Midwest, but was born in Texas. My whole family's from Texas, and of course, I think when your parents are from the South and grew up in the South, you hear a lot of stories as a Black man of, you know, how they walk 5 miles to school and literally to college because they weren't allowed to live on campus and things like that. You know, but then of course, as you grow up and times change, you get up. Yeah, I think you learn to really, how do I want to say, you have to make sure, I think, that you don't get biased in any way. You have your own experiences, and I think we all bring our own experiences and interpretations and everything to this conversation. I like what Benita said about equity, because ultimately, as you know, as I see this in the conversations I have, I think that, you know, is what gets lost in a lot of this, and what truly people are asking for. People in whatever diverse population or category, you know, people tend to think that you know, people are looking for special treatment and that sort of thing, and really everybody's just looking for things to be fair. And quite frankly, from a human nature point of view, that's a big task to ask for. We all have our prejudices. It doesn't matter whether it's racial, whether it's on gender, whether it's on class, and you know, when I hear all these in these conversations, and I by no means am an expert in any kind of way, I just bring my experience. I'm always listening for, you know, what people are doing from an extra effort, a purposeful effort to fight some of the innate biases that, you know, that we have. What I try to do, and have always tried to do in any of my surroundings, is be who I am, not necessarily try to represent an entire group or entire whatever, and not necessarily to break stereotypes or impressions, but to be true to my beliefs, my values, and let people see who I am for what it's worth, and not necessarily, oh, you know, a Black man or this and that and the other, because you know, everybody once again comes with their own impressions. The thing when I always bring this to this type of conversation, I said I wasn't going to talk 5 minutes. I have a feeling that was probably going to be a lie. You know, I went to school at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. Not to say anything great about Purdue, great school as far as I was concerned, but is an interesting place to be, because in northern West Lafayette is in northern Indiana. It's about maybe 2 hours south of Chicago, and kind of small town in and of itself. And I went to school with people who literally, white people who grew up in the country of Indiana, or in the country area of Indiana, had never seen a Black person in person until they got to college. And then also Black people from, let's say, Gary, Indiana, who had seen plenty of Caucasian individuals, but did not know any unless they were their doctor or something like that. And it's funny, everybody came with their own beliefs and that sort of thing. And a funny thing happened in those 4 years as they started to kind of be around each other and see that they weren't that much different than the other. They had preferences, you know, guys were kind of the same, girls were kind of the same. And I saw just a lot of mind shifting, mind changing over that time period. And the key to all of that was exposure and conversation, so that deeply held beliefs were melted away. I think it was Mark Twain who says, as a quote one of my colleagues says all the time, I love it, it's not what we know for sure. I'm gonna butcher it, but I like it. Yeah, no, I'm gonna butcher it. So therefore, basically, it's what we know for sure that just simply ain't so, which is what gets us in trouble. Too many people go in thinking, I know this for sure, and they have a belief, and that's all it is. It's a belief. It's based on nothing but experience. So when we have these conversations, and as you're listening, the one thing I always point out is, you know, try to challenge yourself into where your biases are, where your prejudices are, where you might not be fair in the way you're looking at things, the way you're interpreting things, and what efforts you're looking to make. Once again, I just try to be on an individual basis as fair and as observant and aware of my weaknesses as possible, and see if I can work on them. Once again, Benita, I'm sure I didn't answer any of the questions that you said, but I know I'm running up on time, so I'm going to leave it at that.
Yes, of course you did. Oh, he who said he could not talk for 5 minutes.
I know, what was I talking about? So yeah, that's it for me.
No, thank you very much, and for giving us such a rich start, James. Thank you. So I turn now to our next panelist, Zenobia Harris. And Zenobia, you know, again, tell us about yourself, the organization you represent, and the role you play in creating a diverse and inclusive workforce. And I think that you play that in many ways, because my understanding is you also work as a consultant in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So why is diversity, equity, inclusion, why is it important to you? What obstacles do you encounter in creating a diverse and inclusive workforce? What tactics do you employ, or what resources could you benefit from? So I'll turn the forum over to you and address those questions in the way that you would prefer to address them.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm always honored to be in such good company. And thank you so much to Renton and the Chamber for allowing me this space. So yes, I am Zenobia Harris. I'm the CEO for the Kent Chamber of Commerce. I am the only sitting CEO for the state of Washington Chamber. So we have about maybe 140 chambers here in the state of Washington. I happen to be the only Black one. I knew that kind of going into the job, and it almost deterred me from applying for the job, because I felt like it wasn't an inclusive space. And then I had to put on my consultant hat and think, well, how dare I not try to break a barrier to make it easier for someone else? So here I am. My role at the organization, and I'm sure a lot of you may have this same thought process, is when I went into the role, I was not thinking about bringing my other hat of diversity and inclusion. Yes, I would bring that in as I was going through my hiring and my events, but I didn't think that I had room at the table to bring in such, to some people, seems like a heavy topic. And so it wasn't until recently where I felt like, you know, Zenobia, there is a need for this topic from all businesses. For me, specifically businesses in the city of Kent, being the 10th most diverse city in this in the world, you know, there is space for that. So for me, I want to just create, as a leader, I want to create a space where I say, I don't want my daughter to know the first Black anything. I don't want my daughter to know or be the first at anything. And so for me, that's really what drives me. And the resources and tactics that I use is, I'm a firm believer. It could be because I went into education at a late age, where I went to school. We did a lot of teamwork, and I'm more of a real world experience person. So I like to just throw myself into situations and figure out how to get out of this situation safely. And I encourage other people to do that. And that's exactly what you guys are doing in this conversation. You're kind of thrusting yourself into a conversation you don't know a lot about, but you're willing to be open and learn. And that is what I do for my members. That's what I do for my clients. We kind of go down this road of figuring out where their blind spots are. And I do a lot of talk on implicit bias. That is I would say that is my baby. And I'm a very biased person, but the first thing that you'll learn about diversity and inclusion is once you recognize what your biases are, then you really can move past that. And so I'm okay with saying that I'm biased. I know where my biases lie. And so, I also move through the world, and I tell people that my diversity, when you look at me at first glance, yes, I am a Black woman, but my diversity, that's probably like 10th on the list of the things that makes me very diverse as a person. And so, it's my socioeconomic background that really is a driver in my diversity and has allowed me to see a variety of things. We're talking someone who grew up on food stamps as a young child and bought a first house at 25 because I surrounded myself with people that, and these weren't family members, these are just friends and people in the community. So I have this way of sitting in a space where I know where my bottom is. I know where people who struggle or maybe don't have opportunity is, but I also know that if you surround yourself and you use your resources, that you can make it to where it is that you want to do. So, my role here really today is just answer any question that you have, but be completely honest that this is a journey that I've been on for a long time, and I'm learning every single day more about myself, more about people, and more about the opportunities that, that arise as it relates to diversity and inclusion. If I have a few more minutes, I say that I like to move, blissfully ignorant through the world. If you know me, you know that I change my hair. Diane, you cannot. I change my hair probably every 3 to 4 weeks. No problem. I was not aware, and this is where I was ignorant. I was not aware there was legislation on the books that did not allow me to do that. That did not allow me to wear my natural hair, dreadlock hair, as a Black woman. And that wasn't until I started working at the chamber and I saw that there were initiatives and people fighting against that. So again, I just have been blissfully ignorant, moving through the world, acting as if, there aren't barriers for me because that's how I function. And here it is now in my role. Maybe I need to take a deeper look at things that are in the books, right? Maybe I need to look at legislatively, what are some of the things that are put in place that are holding people back? And not that your hair would hold you back, but could you imagine being fired because you wanted to wear your natural hair? I think that's sad. And fortunately, it's never happened to me, but it has happened to someone and it was on the books. So diversity is important to me. I think my success, I lend that to my ability to attach myself to people who are willing to bring me up to the next level, wherever that is. And it can't be the same person that looks like you, talks like you, because then you won't, in my opinion, you won't get too far. So.
Thank you so much. And so I would like to open the door to our third esteemed panelist, Benny Royce Rayan. I have to say, although this is our first time meeting, 2 of my granddaughters got their early leadership start at Evergreen City Ballet. So I'm hoping to hear great things from you. And again, tell us about yourself, the organization you represent, the role you play in creating a diverse and inclusive workplace, why diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to you and your organization, or what obstacles do you encounter in creating a diverse and inclusive workplace, or what tactics do you employ, and what resources could you benefit from? So I open the floor to Benny Royce.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I want to right away thank Diane for inviting me to speak and share my experiences and perspectives today. Diane is actually one of the first few people that I introduced myself to in person. I'm glad I was able to do it in person when I took the position at Evergreen City Ballet as the artistic director. So thank you so much. And for everybody else, thank you for carving out the time and allowing me to share myself and my experiences. Benita Horn, thank you so much for your time. Zenobia, James, and everybody else. Yes, I am, my pronouns are he, him, and a new one is they. So he, him, they. I am a gay, queer, film immigrant. My mom was a nurse, putting herself through school as a nurse. When we immigrated here, my dad was a truck driver. I'm an eldest of 4. I was a scholarship student at Evergreen City Ballet back when it was in Auburn in a small studio, corner studio. And then we moved to Renton about over 10 years ago, where we are now at the Cedar River Corporate Park. I've been impacted a lot by community building and the arts. So that's what I'm gonna share with you. I'm sharing my own lived experiences, my perspectives, and what is important to me. So that aligns and that echoes what James was sharing earlier, that, you know, I'm only sharing what I'm experiencing and what I value. Yeah, I don't speak for everyone, but I'm sure that the communities that I have intersections with could relate. One thing that I brought up to Diane was we're not monolithic. As we do this work together, it's important to really understand the nuances of our conversations and our efforts together. One thing that was really appreciative of what has been brought up by Benita, Zenobia, and James is that the notion of intentionality. And so as we move forward together, I think some takeaways that I want you to have is that we have to be super intentional with our actions, our thoughts, and how we want to move forward. We also have to act and connect with each other in an informed way, right? And so what does that mean in an informed way? I'm gonna talk for an hour. If I detail it up, I'm just gonna plant some ideas and topics for an entry point that we can all discuss further. It also has to be participatory, which is what you're doing. Diane and Renton of Chamber and everybody else on here, we're gathering together. We're still gathering, and that's really important. I think we have to remember that this effort alone is really impactful already from the get-go. Also, we also have to think about long-term, that this is not just a short-term, that this is just not a trend. You know, just because the racial and social injustices that's happening and everything we're experiencing right now is we're hitting a maximum critical capacity, that we maintain the urgency and the sense of urgency and the sense of importance, the grave importance that we have to transform. We have to evolve our culture. Our American culture we're at the precipice of great change, especially this year. Yeah, and I think we all feel that, like the stress and everything and the potential, but we can swing the pendulum to a more harmonious and unified front so that we can succeed as human beings. So things I wanted to bring up. The steps to me, from my perspective, of plugging into DEI. Why DEI? For me, you've all said it and you all know it, acknowledging and recognizing, right? So acknowledging that there are injustices that our people are also experiencing, individual, personal, and collective communal trauma. As what Zenobia had said, the biases, it's really important to acknowledge your own bias, and that's something that I'm trying to also work through personally, so I can understand and act from a place of kindness, empathy, compassion towards others and myself as I help forward. To be honest, also, I'm about to bring this second component, which is dialogue. It's really important for me to bring this up. When Diane reached out to me to participate on this, I had mixed feelings, convoluted feelings, because I felt that, again, I brought it up, not monolithic. I hope I'm not being tokenized, and I hope there's also a value back to the person that you're asking. It's important to set up these conversations and dialogues so that we can share our lived experiences and perspectives. But as the opportunity is given, and as we work to center the identities, lives, experiences of BIPOC people, it's really important to ask them or to provide something of value back to them. I'm not talking about money, but it's rather than transactional, it's transformative, right? So we can talk that and discuss that in detail, but I wanted to bring that up right away. Obviously, resources are a very important part of this work that we're all doing. The small businesses in the arts and culture sector and service industry typically have less resources, yeah, and so we have to find a way to have a conversation, bring this conversation to the larger aspects or sectors like corporate companies and whatnot. But there's other ways to look into this: time, connection, and volunteership. Yeah. Discuss evaluation, the time. Yep. Following through, we have to all follow through with each other. I know we are all busy and that our plate is full, but following through is really important. I am so glad I called Diane. She and I finally connected on a personal level, and I feel like I'm not alone. And for me, for someone like her, who's cultivating this kind of work, and I can feel the authenticity and genuineness and sincereness, I felt listened to. I felt that she's valuing what I'm bringing up. And so that makes all of us in the marginalized groups feel that we're given the space. Yeah, that's really important. Before we enter any serious in-depth conversations about DEI, it's important for all of us to know that, are you opening an invitation that makes them feel welcomed? Yes, and so that's something I'm looking into at Evergreen City Ballet is our space inclusive? Is our space diverse? Are we working towards that? What kind of conversations and how are we transforming the space? So I posted in the front, when you enter at the door, we have obviously our COVID policies, but we also have the LGBT flag, we have the Black Lives Matter, and we also have a safe space statement, yeah? And then in our productions, I started to include the land acknowledgement and other important things that really ignite conversations about all of these things. I'm almost done, Benita. Partnerships. I'm looking forward to partner with all of you. Oh my gosh. Together we can do a lot. I know I'm very passionate. I'm very impassioned. So I'm looking for that. Again, not a performative allyship or partnership that I'm interested in. And I'm sure all of you are in the same place. I'm looking for something transformative. Community building is at the core of what we all do. I keep sharing myself and introducing myself to the community because I am bi-coastal. I'm still going back and forth in New York. And my main mission is to bring the world of dance in Renton into the Puget Sound region. I've been lucky enough to, attend the Juilliard School, do high-profile projects, Broadway, and dance has brought me to many places. And so I'm just giving back, not to only my students, but the community that has helped me here in Washington State to get to where I am. So I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, we're bringing people together and we're discussing really important things. Transformation, all that stuff. And to end, I center my work at the intersection of collaboration, innovation, and community building. There's so much more that I want to share with you, but I don't want to talk your ear off, and I want to provide the space to so we can get started on some conversations. Benita, thank you so much. I don't know if I answered all your questions. Zenobia, you're inspiring. James, oh my God, brother, what? Diane, you rock. And all of you, I cannot wait to meet you. And mute.
You make me feel
you all did so well. You all did so well. And what I appreciate is just the, not only the wealth of your lived experiences and your willingness to share your personal lived experiences, but the diversity of the different aspects of, as we begin to kind of try to get, see more tangibly and clearly, what might diversity, equity, inclusion look like. And, and I did hear some themes. I really, what jumped out for me as I listened to James was, when he was sharing his experience of going to college and how people who had very limited or no exposure to people from different backgrounds, once they had that exposure, begin to find common ground and really begin to see each other as individuals. And, it's often said that, that in today's environment, that geography takes the place of Jim Crow laws. So I remember, when my kids were growing up, I was married at that time. My ex-husband is a physician and his practice was in Ballard. And so the kids and I spent a lot of time in Ballard. And I can't tell you how many times we would have Ballardites tell us, "You're the first Black person I've ever talked to." And, I'm thinking, how could this be in Seattle? But it's, when we have that opportunity, Zenobia, I really valued what you said about the fact that we are all on a journey. I always kind of cringe when somebody introduces me as an expert, because I do this work because it's a continual learning for me. I'm on my journey. I believe everybody else is on their journey. There are no experts, and we're all learning together and sharing with each other. And Benny Royce, when you talked about, the intentionality of, of connecting, with intentionality. So it's like connections don't happen by accident, right? We have to actually go out and seek opportunities to meet people and get to know people outside of our close circles, and create spaces that are opening and welcoming so that people feel welcomed and included even when they walk in. So, all of those, and so much more stuck out for me. But what I'd like to do now is really open it up to the audience. If Diane, if you were actually, someone could allow me to share my screen. What I've done is basically just taken our slide presentation and, repositioned, posted some of the questions that we put out there, so that, as we ask the audience for their thoughts and input, they have something to look at. So, oh, great, I can do that now. Yay. All right. And let me make sure. Okay. So can you see that? Are the questions there, Sean?
Yep.
Yes?
Yep.
Yep.
You're good.
Okay, great. So, okay, so these aren't all of the questions that we put in the blast that we sent out to all of you with the invitation, because, I wanted to put them in large enough font so you could read them. But, any one of these questions that anyone in the audience would like to speak to, so we put a bunch up there, and we just want you to kind of go with what resonates for you. So, to get you thinking, are there resources or training that your organization is interested in offering to staff? Does your organization participate in any activities in an intentional, it should be intentional, effort to promote inclusion and employee engagement, in an intentional effort to create a welcoming environment for your customers? How can your organization create a safe space for conversations? One of my visions, being part of this, planning team that put these together, is, how do we create spaces where we can talk about, race, where we can talk about, gender identity and expression, where we can talk about, any of our lived experience, our abilities, disabilities, without struggling for words or feeling awkward? How can your organization create a safe space for conversations? Are there ways your organization can acknowledge or recognize diversity within the workplace or the community? Do staff, leadership, volunteers who identify as people of color or any other marginalized groups feel comfortable bringing their full identities to the workplace if they choose to? And what would you like to share or learn more about? So I'm just going to open it up to the audience and ask that, let's hear from you, because remember what Sean said, your input will guide the content of the programs going forward in 2020, of the conversations going forward. And I would include our panelists in that too. You're part of the community. If there are any of these that you would like to address. Sean, you said we did get some input from folks who sent questions in advance. Are there any of those that you can share?
Yeah, we did. So Benita, one woman who entered, who raised a question earlier, was looking for just some more clarifications on how we define certain definitions, which you spoke to at the beginning of it, how Renton defines diversity. So we put that in the chat box, but also in like what marginalized groups are. And I think we spoke to that early, so thank you very much. But I think this is very indicative of what many people may consider, may wonder. They may be hesitant to ask, is like, what is diversity? And oftentimes, as Zenobia spoke to, it's not just what physically presents itself, but there are a lot of different components that arise that influence who we are and how we feel included in the community. And specifically, there was a call out of neurodiversity. And I know that neurodiversity is not often understood by employers, but this is a great example of how can we educate ourselves, how can we educate larger communities and larger corporate environments as to the value of neurodiverse candidates in recruiting, but also in retention of the employers. So that was one, and I don't know if you want to speak to that a little more, or if you have any other thoughts to that. But the point also in that is that, you know, that I want to kind of reemphasize is that everybody here who's on this call and who's not on this call, so going forward, fast forward plug to kind of recruit other people into this community, is we don't know what we don't know. And coming together and having these conversations in a very safe space, and thank you panelists for presenting your stories, because it just goes to show everybody that this is a journey that we all are on. And the more that we're able to have these conversations and share our perspectives, then it may shed light onto something that we historically had never taken into consideration.
You know, and such a good point. There's all kinds of diversity, you know, especially in the workplace. Some of it, as you mentioned, is invisible. And we make assumptions about people, or sometimes we make comments about people in a way that that touches on someone else's invisible diversity and causes them to feel unwelcome and alienated. Sometimes, you know, our diversity can, you know, it can reflect our professional status. I never will forget when I had the opportunity to head up a task force of marketing salespeople and engineers. And I'm telling you, I couldn't think of two more diverse groups to work with, you know, and the people in sales were saying, you know, our job is to sell, sell, sell. And the engineers were saying, but wait a minute, don't sell it until we design it. You know, and so, you know, there was this tension between the groups just because of their professional points of reference. So
Benita, we have one question in the chat from Bernie, which I'm going to read out to everyone. And then afterwards, Linda has a question that I will give her the floor for. So the question is for Zenobia. The DEI program is exceptional. Do you see partnering opportunities between the Renton Chamber of Commerce and the Kent Chamber of Commerce to have mutual workshops in the future?
Yes. Yes, I wholeheartedly, I think, you know, everyone, again, to create something diverse, the people putting it together need to be diverse as well. You cannot have, when people say my board is all Black because I'm reaching out to Black people, I'm like, bad idea, back up. Now, you know, now you are doing what you don't want people to do to you. So yes, I do see there's opportunities when this started, we're both kind of working on something at the same time. And so you guys are having these wonderful community conversations. We are actually, and our first one is tomorrow night, and it is Black in Business, the intersection of minority businesses and COVID-19, because there has been a light shine on the differences and inequities because of COVID-19. They were always there, but now you really see the disparities, right? So if you have employees and you were to tell a white employee it's time to go home because they've got to get tested versus a Black employee, their experience after that moment is going to be different. So I think this is great. You guys are bringing in the community, we're bringing in business owners, and together I think we can make something very beautiful because, you know, one needs the other. You can't have businesses without the community, and the community, you know, would like to support the businesses. So yes, I see that in the very near future.
Beautiful. And there, and Sean, did you say there was another one?
Yeah, we have a question out there from Linda. Linda, would you like to come off mic and ask it so I don't butcher it?
Thank you so much, Sean. It's so good to see everyone. And yeah, so I'm Linda Lowry. I'm with Bloodworks Northwest. And, you know, I would just, you know, one of your questions you said is, are there resources or training that your organization is interested in offering to staff? And the answer is yes. Like with Bloodworks, we're not seeing a lot of diversified blood donations. And we are a huge research institute as well. We work closely with UW and Fred Hutch. And we need more diversified blood for research purposes and also for our patients. And then I also wanted to let everyone know that there have been some updated FDA guidelines to MSM male sex male donations and for overseas travel that was updated in June of this year. And I'm more than happy to send you the information to share on your website because I think it's really important information that needs to go out there, especially to our LGBTQ community who have wanted to donate in the past and they could not because of MSM deferral. And it has been now it's just a 3-month MSM deferral. And then there's also, if you've been to overseas, like England, you can now donate as well with the same 3-month deferral. So I'd love to share that with the Renton Chamber of Commerce if possible.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's one of our goals and objectives is Diane and at the Chamber to house these resources that our community can benefit from. So please send that and that's part of our action item after we leave today.
Thank you, thank you. And also just let you folks know, if you haven't donated, there's still time to donate before we end. Right now we're doing COVID-19 convalescent plasma testing on all blood donations through October 31st. So if you'd like to donate, please go to our website, sign up, and then you'll be tested for the COVID-19 antibodies. And we can also tell you what your blood type is as well. And we also have scholarships, I forgot, available to high school and college students who want to donate.
Did you attack
Hey, I'm not sure what that was. Linda, can I ask a question real quick? Where can we find out about, well, glad to hear you guys are doing the antibody testing and that sort of thing. It's time for me to give blood again anyway. Where do you find out about the scholarships and that sort of thing? Just really quickly.
Yeah, so I'll put it in the chat as well. But yes, just go to our website and look under student scholarships, and it's for high school and college students. And I'm not seeing a lot of people of color names on the students that are getting scholarships. So I'd love to see diversified names receive the scholarships.
And that's what actually one of the reasons why I asked. A lot of times, I mean, as, on this topic, I think change and inclusion and equity really comes a lot from just exposure, exposure to each other. Like I said earlier, because we find out we don't have that many differences, and quite frankly, hey, it's not because you're exposed to somebody you don't like them. At least you just don't like them because of one of their particular characteristics and not one of their personality traits, and not because of what they look like or what classification they're in. And with exposure also comes conversation and comes sharing of information, like scholarship information, where maybe where it's a homogeneous collection of applicants because, well, they all are the same, they talk to each other, but that's the thing that's limited. And that's also what you find, I think, when we talk about what do you get out of diversity in the workplace, in whatever it is, it's what everybody brings to the table, that now brings in a heterogeneous set of ideas and approaches. And Benita, I love your sales marketing engineer example, because it's true, they all kind of come from a different set of viewpoints, and the more you see another's viewpoint, you realize how limited maybe yours is, or what you didn't think about. And that's what people of color, people of different cultures bring. Maybe they think of things a different way. Maybe they attack a problem a different way. Women attack problems differently than men, dare I say.
Absolutely, James, and it goes on and on. Right, but here's where I want to take us, because we only have a few minutes left. And here's where I really would like to do a rapid fire and hear a rapid fire shout out from those of you in the Zoom room today. So I want you to think about, if you've been with us, if this is for the second time or if this is for the first time, what would keep you coming back to these conversations in 2021? You know, what topics, you know, what focus, what resources, what information, you know, what would be truly useful to you that would make you say, ooh, I got to put community conversations on my calendar for sure. So I just would like to go around the Zoom room, and even if you just have a sentence or a few words, what would you like to these conversations to embrace next year?
I like to learn more about how to create affinity groups, particularly BIPOC and my organization, but then also, you know, just focusing on other groups like LGBTQ or, you know, veterans or whatever. But I want to be able to have more resources on facilitating that type of space.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, next person. We're going to go around the room now.
I would like to be able to be more comfortable in having conversations that are challenging with people that don't have my sense of ideas, because I find sometimes being a white person, people feel like I'm on their side somehow, or, you know, that I'm going to think like them. And so I find it very hard to have those conversations. So yeah, I'd like to learn more about how to have those in a healthy, safe way without it getting divisive.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What else would you like?
For me, it's to hear stories. It's stories that I just can't quite imagine. When she talked about not being able to wear her hair a certain way, that just blew my mind. And yet I know that it's been a thing at the state level. I am familiar with that, but the more story I hear about the injustice and inequity that's happened in the past and continues to today is so insightful for me, because it's stuff I just take for granted. And while it sounds simple, but for me, it's very effective to hear the stories.
You know, that's wonderful. And Kim, you know, what I would just add to that, good to see you, by the way, what I would just add to that is, you know, the other side of the coin. You know, I was in a community conversation, I'm going to date myself, but this was when Jay Covington was still the chief administrative officer at the city. And he and I were invited to a group, and this group was very open and honest, and people of color were talking about their lived experiences with injustice, and people who are white were talking about their lived experiences with privilege. And, you know, and that was like a whole eye opener for me, because, you know, that's not been my lived experience. So I'd like to, you know, maybe just add that we have both sides of the coin. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going around the Zoom room. Who else haven't we heard from?
Well, I'm going to echo Kim and
go ahead.
Okay. I just want to echo Kim and say stories. I love the idea of stories. And also, I go into a classroom and I really want to know how to draw things out, specifically pronouns, so that everyone feels comfortable, and then also be able to be open enough to receive feedback if I have said something in a classroom setting where it may have been insensitive to someone else.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Who was that speaking? I'm sorry. I'm going to send you a link. Are the instructor that was just speaking?
Christy.
Oh, hi, Zenobia. It's Christy Slotemaker.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Benisha, were you going to speak?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to jump on the bandwagon with Natalie Evans and say I would love to have more of those groups forming, but I would also like to learn how to foster those groups and not see them become divisive, because that's been my experience. They get closer, tighter knit together, and they become exclusive. So more words on that would be super helpful.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, who else is just dying to share? We haven't heard from yet.
Hi, this is Samantha from RTC. Good to see you all. There's a few things actually. I would be happy to be a resource for this group. We have a lot of different activities that we do at the college, and I think one of my colleagues, Jamie McGinnis, is also on this call, and we are in the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council. And as a part of that council, we look at different issues. We also have affinity groups, several affinity groups. So I would be happy to, if that's an interest, to kind of connecting us with them. Maybe if you want to invite them to a meeting, I would be happy to arrange that. And we're doing a lot of different work. Today, we're talking about supporting undocumented students. We're looking at having something kind of more public announcement about our support of that group. And we're always looking for, my interest is always, I really want to know how to support people of color and people from marginalized populations. There was a mention of Kiana Davis's book about unyielding roots. She's actually one of my colleagues. We're in the same department. And, you know, we have faculty of color and from marginalized populations, and we have these things happen like within our own campus community where there's issues like this. So I think it's just like a matter of supporting them. And what I'm always looking for is ways to give them resources, because that population is the ones who are going to struggle with getting like surviving right now and getting to even just like things like if they're going to school, like gaining through school, affording school, like our BFET program right now is not going to be able to give students books anymore, a food stamps program. So students who are on food stamps aren't going to be getting that resource. So we're just kind of really looking for more and more ways to support people that are in those marginalized groups.
Samantha, thank you so much. That was so rich, and I appreciate your sharing not only, you know, what you could share with the group, because, you know, we learn so much from each other, and that, as you've seen, that's kind of the pattern of the conversations, asking people to share their experiences. So, you know, we have questions about affinity groups. RTC has affinity groups. Maybe some members of your affinity groups could come and share at one of the conversations. And then also identifying the resources that you would like to find from us. Thank you. Anyone else before, are we out of time? Are we at time? We pretty much are.
Yeah.
If you have 1 minute, I'd like to share like something brief.
Yeah.
On our end, what we can offer at Evergreen City Ballet, you know, somebody mentioned scholarship, and I think I mentioned also that I've been impacted by that scholarship. If I didn't get the scholarship to go to Evergreen City Ballet, I would have not had a place to deal with all of the microaggressions and injustices that was directed at me as a Filipino American and gay person, right? So if you have any people out there, you know anyone aspiring dancers that would love to take up on dance, we do have scholarships that we're offering as well. We have merit and need-based scholarships to also support communities, local artists and creators. And this is something I wanted to launch, and Diane, I'll connect with you on this because I think there's a partnership opportunity with the City of Renton and the Chamber, is that we would like to offer a space for creatives, so for people, for young or emerging artists, whether that be visual performing arts or whatever. We do have the space during the day where, you know, maybe it's a residency, maybe it's a co-sponsorship in a program that I'm kind of like right now brainstorming, Made in Renton, you know. There's a lot of other programs similar to that on the East Coast, and I'm just trying to replicate all of the things that are working. So that's what we can offer. There's a lot more. We have resources, the space, you know, things that don't cost that we can share with the community. There is an ask on this end. Yeah, partnerships and support, any corporate sponsorships or any community partnerships that we can integrate our programming together. We're talking about inclusivity of identity, experiences, and how we express ourselves. But in terms of organizationally and what we do as communities in our circles, I think we should also diversify and be inclusive with our programming. How do we do that? How do we promote and advocate for each other? Because inevitably, everyone on this call, we have the great potential to actualize being an ambassador for each other.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
really
you
key
so
as we have these honest conversations. So I'm done. Thank you.
Your input has all been so rich. I've done one of the things I rarely do, which is allowed us to go over time. So Sean, I'm going to turn this back to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, turn this back to you to close us out.
Check one, Mike. All right, I'm off mute. Thanks, and this was just fabulous conversation. I really appreciate it. And we'll get to everything, hopefully. That's the purpose for our next step. On the 3rd of December, we're going to summarize a lot of the input that we've heard today, the resources that have been requested, and also we're going to be sending out a survey to you just to add to if there are any afterthoughts as to what we may want to see. And we'll summarize that, we'll get to questions as we set our strategy and our pathway going forward. And I know that Royce addressed this, and we want to make sure that we keep hammering this, is that this is just not a flash in the pan initiative. I mean, it's not going away. That's why we're taking the time to intentionally go through the end part of this year on gathering what it is that our community is looking for. And then we'll look to set the roadmap for 2021, where we have a constant cadence of topics that we address, trainers that we bring in. I mean, if it's Zenobia, who's the expert in addressing implicit bias, and that's one of the topics. And Victoria, we'll acknowledge your question as well too, that you said, hearing how employers and managers can support employees of color. And, things like, Debbie had asked about how do you hold those courageous conversations? How do you accept feedback? So these are some of the things that we're looking to establish going forward. So please stay tuned. Follow up with the survey that we send out in the next coming days and try to get the input back to us by the 13th of November so that we can summarize those, that feedback and present it back to you and have further dialogue in our safe space on the 3rd of December. And I just ask that if you guys have any other questions, please stay engaged. But even also as important is that reach out and recruit others to join the conversation, because there's so much out there that we can accomplish if we work together as one. I mean, we already are building that base out of the Renton community, and we have the support of Kent community. So it's just, and then we have the larger corporations who we will recruit to try to leverage some of their expertise and some of their training knowledge. So that's what I have, and I appreciate everyone's time and sticking around for us to stay over time. And again, to Diane for her leadership at the Chamber, and I will give you the final word for this.
There's nothing I can say to truly express my appreciation and inspiration that I feel for everybody today, and the September when we had a conversation as well. I am learning and growing, and I appreciate and I'm honored to walk alongside of all of you with this platform of growth as we better our community around us. So thank you, and thank you, Sean, for your leadership.
Great, and thank you very much. And we will send out this recap, this recorded version, if you want to watch it again, or if other people have the opportunity to watch it. All right, and James, I apologize for leaving out for adding the T. It just was not feeling included. So I was promoting inclusion of the T next to the S in there, okay?
Fair enough.